We've all heard it before, and we're all going to hear it again. Consistency is key. We all know this to be true. It's important no matter what skill you're trying to develop or what business you're trying to grow, that you're consistent with it so that you can see the results that you want. But what a lot of people who give this advice fail to offer is how to actually implement it. How can you become consistent, specifically as a content creator? That is exactly what I want to talk to you about today, because I'll be honest, I am a huge nerd for systems, for organizations, for being efficient, okay? I live for that stuff. And if it weren't for the workflow that I've put in place, I don't think I'd be able to create nearly as much content as I do now. So we're going to break that all down in today's episode. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Creator Club. Another crucial component which will allow you to create content that helps you to actually grow is analyzing your analytics, which I love to do using Dash Hudson, who's also the sponsor of the Creator Club podcast. Honestly, I know that for creative folks like us, metrics can feel a little bit overwhelming. You're like, okay, I don't love numbers. I don't really get it. Dash Hudson makes it understandable with their visual dashboards, which you can customize to automatically surface the metrics that mean the most to you. Plus, you can sync it with all of your different social platforms from Instagram to YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. It's all in one place, so you don't have to switch between all these different platforms to create your monthly reports for your clients or just to analyze the content performance for your own accounts. And Dash Hudson has just released their social media trends report for 2024. Not only does Dash Hudson keep me up to date with my own social media metrics, but they're also reporting on the industry metrics as a whole, which is so helpful for content creators and social media managers. In the report, you can check out the trends surrounding boosting content. Should you boost your posts? Which posts should you be boosting? And what results can you expect? And the different ways organic, paid, and creator content can drive results for brands. I find this kind of thing fascinating, and I know it's so helpful for people creating content, whether it's for our own brands or clients or a brand that we work for. Overall, I just love using Dash Hudson. It is completely my preference rather than going through the Insights page in the Instagram app or trying to use any other kind of built-in Insights tool. Dash Hudson just makes it so much easier, and you can grab a free trial of Dash Hudson as a Creator Club podcast listener by going to dashhudson.com/Creator Club. Okay, so one of the easiest ways to stay consistent is never run out of ideas. And I know that sounds like, okay, cool. It's really easy to run out of ideas. But actually, if you implement this little trick, you probably will never run out of ideas again. Here's the little trick. Okay, it's not a little trick. It's actually a comprehensive strategy that I try to implement so that I always have fresh content ideas. So when it comes to filling out my content calendar and actually doing my content production, I'm not starting from a place of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to make? The first strategy is to schedule regular brainstorm sessions. I personally find that when I create content by coming up with the idea and then immediately executing on it, like coming up with the idea for the reel and then immediately filming it, it's usually not as good as it could be, because honestly, my impatience sets in. I start creating something and I'm like, okay, I just want to get this done. Let's just get this checked off the list. And because I get impatient with it, it doesn't turn out as good as it could be. I don't give it room to breathe. I don't give it that time for me to really stew on the idea, come up with maybe a better approach, and then execute on it. So that's why I really like to separate my ideation from my actual content creation. And the way I do this is by having regular content brainstorming sessions and developing a content idea database. So I like to sit down maybe once a month, maybe twice a month, and just try to come up with all the ideas that I can think of that would be helpful for my community, or entertaining or inspiring or educating. You can think about those 3 different ways to provide value and try to come up with as many concepts as you can in maybe like a certain chunk of time. You can make this fun by going to your favorite coffee shop and getting out your notebook and really trying to get in the frame of mind of that ideal follower. you can just start it on paper if you want and really just start jotting down all the potential concepts that come to mind. But eventually, I do really recommend putting them into some kind of database or some kind of digital storage strategy. So if you know me at all, you'll know that I'm a Notion girly. I'm obsessed with Notion and their database system. So I have a content calendar database with a few different views, including one that's just kind of a list view of all of my different concepts. And then once I assign a date to that concept, it'll actually show up in my calendar view. I find this is a really good system to kind of take you through the steps of just ideation. And then eventually once you're sold on an idea and you're like, yeah, I love this, I want to create it, then you can add a publication date. And then that kind of triggers you to start the actual content creation process and start incorporating it into your like weekly workflow of filming, editing, all that stuff. Speaking of a weekly workflow, that brings me to my next tip for you, my next secret for staying consistent, and that is having a standardized weekly workflow or content creation routine. And crucially, you want this routine to suit your actual life. It is so important that you don't create this routine based off of ideals or how you want your week to look, but rather like, how does your week actually look? How much time do you genuinely have? When you base it off of this more realistic point of view, it's just much more likely to work. Let me tell you a little story about my own content creation workflow and how it came to be. For the longest time, I don't even know how, but I had decided I was posting every Tuesday on YouTube. I'm not sure how I arrived at that. I've been doing that for years, so I don't know when I decided it, but at some point I did. And so based on that publication day, I was trying to fit into my week a process that would allow me to post a new YouTube video every Tuesday. And there's just something I feel like about the fresh start of a Monday that feels like that's the time to start, right? That's the time to start your workflow. So I had kind of ended up in this position where I would write my script on Monday. Tuesday, I would film my video, and I know that sounds weird, but I always do them a week in advance, right? So I'm doing this for like the following week. So Tuesday, I would film it, and then like Wednesday, I would edit it, and then Thursday, I would send it for review. And then that always felt a little bit tight because then they only had Thursday and Friday. The brand, I mean by they. The brand would only have Thursday and Friday to review it before getting back to me, because then by the time Monday rolls around, I'm getting stressed like I need to post a video tomorrow and I haven't heard back yet whether or not I need to do revisions. Honestly, now it seems so silly that I was ever doing it that way because it just seems like a recipe for rushing and chaos. But I just felt like Monday was the day to start a new process, to start a new video. I always was running into issues not only with kind of rushing with regards to the brand approvals, but it just seemed like every Tuesday would come around. And every Tuesday morning, I would be ready to film my YouTube videos. And then I would be informed by my husband, Dan, who lives with me in this 500 square foot apartment where I create all my content, that he had a Zoom meeting because he also works remote at the exact same time that I wanted to film my YouTube video. And this would always cause me a lot of distress and frustration. And it just felt like this was happening every single week. So eventually I was like, why does it always seem that when I want to film my YouTube videos, you have a meeting? And he's like, Katie, it's a recurring meeting. It happens every week at the same time. And this stunning realization led me to thinking, you know what? I need a different workflow that actually is based on the schedules of my life. Not only when I'm publishing, but also how long the brands need to review it, and also what's going on in my household around me. Seriously, thinking back on it now, it all just seems so obvious because my current workflow just flows and it just works. So I really should have arrived at it sooner, but kind of after that conversation, I established a new pattern where I would film on Fridays because that's when Dan has the least amount of meetings, and so it's quieter in the apartment so I can film. And then that means I can edit on Monday, and that perfectly works out because I've got some time away from the video over the weekend, so I'm not feeling like bored or over it by the time I sit down to edit. And then it's done on Tuesday, so I can actually send it to the brand for review a full 7 days before I want to post it. So all of that is to say, as obvious as it is, think through those little inconveniences that might come up in your week, those little things that might get in the way of you being able to execute on the content plan that you've made for yourself, and try to anticipate those, account for them, and make a plan that's just going to make content creation easier. Because the truth is, if I wasn't doing this full time, like if I didn't have brands that I was accountable to complete those YouTube videos, it would have been very easy for me upon finding out, oh, the time that I was going to film, it's not going to actually work because I live in a studio apartment and someone else is going to be talking in the background. It would have been easy for me if I was just making it, self-motivated to just not do it, to just let it go and say, I'll try again next week. And that's the case for a lot of content creators that are just getting started and trying to grow, which is why, especially when you aren't accountable to anybody and you're just trying to get this thing going, you need to try to make your content creation process as easy for yourself as possible. That is going to be the key to consistency. My next tip for consistency is to keep your content creation gear accessible and ready to go. In addition to making your process easy for you, the next biggest thing you can do is try to remove any friction that's involved in being able to create your content. And here's what I mean by this. Let me illustrate for you another example outside of the content creation realm of how friction can come up when you're trying to establish a routine or do something good for yourself. Let's say I have a goal of going to a workout class every morning. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and do yoga and just be my best self. So I wake up in the morning and I am ready to go to my class and I want to pull out my favorite workout set, my cute matching tank top and yoga pants, but I find out that they're actually in the wash. Okay, now I have to pick out that ugly old gym shirt and some shorts to wear, but whatever. Then I go grab my Apple Watch to put it on so I can track my workout, but I realize I didn't charge it last night, so okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to track this one, but whatever. Then I want to make sure that I stay hydrated during my workout, so I go to grab my favorite comfort water bottle from the kitchen and I realize it's in the dishwasher because I put a smoothie in it yesterday and what was I doing? And finally, I'm ready to leave the house, but I realize that I can't find my car key anywhere. These are all examples of friction coming up in your routine that is kind of making it more difficult or requiring more energy from you in order to execute on your original plan. It's not that it's impossible. None of these things are complete barriers, but they are making it harder and they're making the decision to just stay home and give up on that yoga class so much easier. So how could I create less friction in that scenario? Well, in our example of getting to the yoga class, I could have found my workout set earlier, like the previous day, and set it out so I could wear it again or wash it to make sure that it's clean. I could make sure that my water bottle is filled and sitting in the fridge so that I can just grab it when I head out the door. And I can also make sure that I know where my freaking car keys are. All of these same opportunities for friction and ways that you can circumvent them exist in the content creation process. For example, you're ready to set up and film a YouTube video, but you realize all of the batteries for your camera are dead. Or you can't find your memory card, or the memory card that you can find is full, but you're not sure if you ever took the footage off of it, so you're scared to format it because you might lose the files. And the lighting's not looking that good today, it's kind of cloudy out, so you're going to have to use your artificial lights, but they're in the back of the closet and it's going to be such a pain to get them out. These are all things that can get in the way of you creating content and ultimately being consistent. So that's why you want to keep your gear accessible, locked and loaded, ready to go, so that when you are ready to create, when you found that time in your schedule, when you're feeling like you have the energy or the inspiration, you can just grab your camera and start filming. So what does that look like for me? Well, like I've previously mentioned, I live in a small apartment, so I don't have some fancy gear closet where everything is sitting out just ready for me to grab off of an aesthetic IKEA pegboard. Unfortunately not, maybe someday. But what I do have right now is an IKEA TV stand that is just to my left right now. If you're watching the video podcast, it's just over there past the Creator Club sign. And in that TV stand, we have a bunch of different tech stuff on the right-hand side, but on the left-hand side, I have bins from the dollar store that are labeled and organized with all of my gear in it. So I have one bin for my microphones and my audio gear, another bin for batteries and memory cards, that kind of thing. And then I have my cameras and lenses sitting out, so they are the easiest to grab. And honestly, I usually keep my camera with my main lens on it and my microphone sitting on it, so I just have to grab it. And I also have my camera battery charger with 3 batteries plugged into it, always plugged into the wall. So those batteries are always charged. And when I deplete a camera battery, I can just swap it out. And then I know that the one that I put in there is going to be charged by the next time I go back for it. Plus, I try to make it a habit that after I film something, I immediately transfer that footage onto my hard drive and then wipe the card so that it's blank again for the next time. All of these things make my content creation process more frictionless. It makes it easy for me to set up and film a video when I'm ready to do so, and it gives me less excuses to give up because things got difficult. So if you can find ways to apply this in your own life, I think you'll find it a lot easier to be consistent when creating a video. Sitting down to film doesn't feel like as much of a task. It just kind of flows better because you've taken the steps to prepare yourself to do it ahead of time. So when inspiration strikes or when you have the time, you're ready to go. The next secret to consistency is having a strong digital organization system. Now, by reducing friction in your environment, like we just talked about, you can make it easier to create content, and you can also reduce the friction in your digital workflow. I like to do this by having a really clear file organization structure so I can always find the media that I need for the content that I'm making. And I don't have to struggle like clicking through all the folders in my hard drive trying to find the files I need when I'm ready to edit. This is going to look different depending on the type of content you make and your frequency of posting, but why don't I tell you a little bit about what my YouTube file organization structure looks like. So I post YouTube videos on a weekly basis, and the way that I've chosen to organize it is I have a YouTube folder on my hard drive, and within that folder, I have a folder for each month of the year. And quick nerdy tip for you, if you label your folder as like 01_January, 02_February, then when you sort them by name, they'll be in actual order of the month rather than just alphabetical order, like April and August would be at the top. Well, if you put the numbers ahead, it'll be in the correct order. Okay, and then within each of those folders, I create another folder for each of my videos, which I like to label by the number of video that they are out of the year. So my very first video in January will be 01_ the title of the video. That'll be the folder name. And then I'll just count up from there. So by the end of the year, I'll be on video number like 50 something, right? So that's how I organize all the main footage for all of my different videos. So I can always go back and grab a clip from a previous video if I need. But on top of that, I also have a B-roll library, which is a game changer for editing your YouTube videos to be more engaging and just have more visuals. And it means you don't have to like reshoot the same B-roll all the time if you often find yourself wanting to include a clip of you writing in a journal or making your coffee or working on your laptop. You can just film that like a couple of times in a couple different outfits and then save it in your library and then reuse them. So inside my B-roll folder, which is inside that YouTube folder, I have a ton of footage that I've actually changed the file name of from, whatever the original file name out of camera was. I've changed it over to actually be a description of what's happening in the video. This means that when you want to find that clip of me writing in my journal, if you named the file writing in my journal, it will actually come up when you search for it in your file explorer or in your editor like Premiere Pro. This is so much nicer than having to visually scan through all of your video previews to find the clip that you want. If you label it, you're just going to make your life easier in the future. Plus, you could consider making templates for like your thumbnails, for your video title cards. Basically, all of these things are like the digital equivalent of making sure your batteries are charged or making sure your camera is easily accessible. It just makes the editing process faster, which means it's easier to be more consistent. My fifth and final secret for consistency that I want to share with you today is to take time offline to recoup and get inspired again. Here's the thing. You can't work constantly and expect to not get burnt out. I'm telling you this from personal experience. It's so crucial that sometimes you slow down and you just take some time away from social media, from consuming content, so that you'll feel refreshed and inspired to go back to that first step that I mentioned and actually brainstorm ideas. I know this might be counterintuitive because often people think that consistency is about really pushing yourself to post more often and be more frequent and create more content. And while that's a piece of the puzzle, like it is important to post consistently, the only way to do that is by making sure that you're working at a pace that's sustainable for you. And also acknowledging that like it doesn't mean you're inconsistent if you take like a couple weeks off a year to just like have a vacation. What I would define as inconsistent is like posting once a week for January and then completely ghosting your followers until October when you post 3 more times, but then you take time off again and then you post consistently again at the beginning of December, but then you're not posting again later. That's inconsistent. What's not inconsistent is to post weekly videos throughout all of the year, except for the month of July when you take a break for summer. So it is possible to build taking breaks into a consistent schedule. I think it's just important that you choose that it's going to be a break rather than just kind of falling off of your workflow and then never getting back onto it. So build in breaks for yourself so that you can be consistent for the rest of your year and continue to reach your community and grow your audience. When it comes to consistency, generally as a content creator, I think it's all about having systems, having routines, and finding balance. Finding that system that's sustainable for you, that doesn't feel like you're run off your feet or that you're going to be burnt out. And that really is the formula for being consistent and seeing success online. Though, of course, another important component of being a successful content creator is keeping an eye on your metrics and using your social media insights to inform your content strategy. And you can do that by using the sponsor of the Creator Club podcast, Dash Hudson. As a listener of the podcast, you can get a free trial of Dash Hudson when you go to dashhudson.com/creator club. And as always, shout out to Dash Hudson for making this podcast possible. And shout out to you for listening and making it to the end of this episode. As always, I want to hear from you. If you are an end of the episode club member, reach out to me on Instagram. You can DM me at Katie Steckley, or you can DM the Creator Club podcast Instagram as well, because I'd love to hear from you. And as always, I will catch you in next week's episode. Bye.